But let's give him a warm welcome, Brother Greg Simpkins, the Vice President from the SULLIVAN Foundation.
Okay. Forgive me for being so impetuous a little earlier, but since I was invited to come, I've been very excited to be before you to speak with you. I have revered the Honorable Marcus Garvey almost all my life, but I didn't know the UNIA was still around in this area. So I never had a connection with you all, although some of you, like Shirley, I've known her for a while. I didn't know you were UNIA, but it doesn't surprise me. The thing is that I met Africans when I was very young, Liberians mostly. And so Africa to me wasn't a concept. There were people whose faces I connected with the continent. So it was always my goal to do something for my people and for Africa. So that's in me. It becomes very frustrating. Sometimes I had lunch with some friends yesterday who work on Africa on the Hill with me. And they get very frustrated and think about leaving, but we don't. Because we love Africa, we love our people, and it's in us, it is us. We can't not do it. Now, I've been blessed to, I should tell you, he said I was a Washingtonian. 4 or 5 blocks down the street is Howard Hospital, which used to be known as Friedman Hospital. My wife and I were both born there many years ago. And we've been Washingtonians. We don't live in Washington now, we live in Lanham, but we're still Washingtonians. When people ask, well, where are you from? From Washington, from D.C. Mm-hmm. And growing up in Washington is a very international city. And you meet many people from the Caribbean, from Africa, so it becomes natural. My daughter grew up knowing people from Africa because some of them stayed with us. My granddaughter knows people from Africa because we bring people around her and bring her around other people. We celebrate Kwanzaa every year at a friend's house, and there are Americans, there are Africans, there are Caribbean people. This is all a part of our life. It is unfortunate that many of our brothers and sisters don't. They don't have a connection to Africa because it's a concept. It's not real to them. So when we talk about dual citizenship, it's a foreign idea to them. Why would I want to be African? What do I have anything to do with that? Because they don't know any Africans. And even those of us who do, sometimes we don't have the proper respect for our brothers and sisters on the continent. I know people today who work on African issues who don't really respect Africans. And it's because they didn't learn that, what Marcus Garvey said, Africa's for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. And too many Africans think that the diaspora is those who were born there. And too many of us think, well, we're diaspora, but, those poor Africans, we have to help them out. After the fall of apartheid in South Africa, some of us who had demonstrated, who had gotten arrested and done so many things to try and bring freedom to the majority in South Africa, rushed over to the continent, and they wanted a piece of the action. And they came with this sense of entitlement that people there found insulting, as anybody would. When Mandela was freed, it wasn't just us, it was them. They died so that he could be out. They shed their blood so that they might have freedom in their country. For us now to come over and say, look, we freed you, that's insulting. And that attitude among us has to die. The attitude among them that they're the only authentic Africans has to die. We have to come together. This time is like no other time in the history of the world when we can build these bridges. That's what attracted me to the Leon H. Sullivan Foundation, because Reverend Sullivan had that in his heart and he built it. He started with OIC of America, which did job training, entrepreneur training here in America. He took that to Africa, OIC International. He created the International Foundation for Education and Self-Help, which brought teachers to Africa. It taught bankers in Africa. He just started so many things like the African American Summit in 1991, which is now the Leon H. Sullivan Summit. This is the largest diaspora gathering in the world every 2 years, except those years when it skips, like this next one, but I'll get into that a little later. we bring together African heads of state. We've had as many as 17. Last year, I think we had 8, including the head of the Western Sahara, which is not recognized as a country by anybody but the African Union, but many of us do recognize it, except the Moroccans, of course. The summit brings together business people, it brings together Africa experts, it brings together African activists, and so many people have learned about their homeland from the summits. My wife was able to go to Africa the first time last year to Tanzania, and she says it was a transformative experience for her to actually be on the continent. I remember the first time I went to Africa, the first landfall I ever met was in Nairobi, Kenya. And I remember when I got off the plane, it was just a spiritual feeling that you're back home. And the next place I landed, unfortunately, was South Africa, which at that time was under white minority rule. But still, it was good to be there. It was good to meet the brothers and sisters there. And then I went to Angola. And you know, it's when I landed in Angola, it was way out in the bush. And when you look up in the sky, you see so many stars. It looks like the sky is painted with stars because there are no cities, there's no light to keep us from seeing what you could see from here if we didn't have all these lights. It's like God just sprinkled stars all over the sky. It's amazing. You know, I've been to the Sahara Desert, and you see the moonlight on the desert, the full moon on the desert. It's like daytime because it reflects off the desert. I've been to the Kalahari in the south, to the Nile, to Zanzibar, to so many exotic places that you hear about. I remember when I went to the pyramids in Giza, and you step out and you see the Sphinx and the 3 pyramids, built by our people, by the way, despite what Elizabeth Taylor may tell you in the movie. It's just amazing. These buildings lasted, in some cases, 5,000 years, longer than anything else on Earth. And it's just amazing. There are chambers under the Sphinx. They still don't know what's in it. Now, you look back at all of the history of the world, the people who came to Egypt, to Heliopolis and other places, to learn mathematics, to learn medicine. And all of these Greeks that we are taught to revere as being the father of medicine or the father of mathematics, they were the sons of Egypt. Egypt taught them that. And I went to a presentation once at American Enterprise Institute. This lady, Mary Lefkowitz, was saying that, well, you know, Cleopatra was Greek. Well, the Cleopatra she talks about was Greek. Cleopatra the 7th. The other Cleopatras were black. The one who built the pyramids was black. It's just that by the time that Cleopatra came along, the Greeks had conquered Egypt. And so, you know, you have all of these people who try to make us feel like we didn't do anything. You know, this is as far back as Rome, when I believe it was one of the scholars of Rome said, what good can come from Africa? Well, he knows, but he doesn't want to admit it. And people have told us all these years that we don't have anything to contribute, but we do, and they know we do. If that wasn't the case, you wouldn't have had Napoleon blow the noses off the Sphinx and the other statues, because they knew it looked like us. If you go to the British Museum in London, my favorite museum, because of all the African stuff in it. It should be somewhere else, but it's in London. When you look at the statues of the pharaohs, they look like us, because they were us. But they want you to think it wasn't. So people like Marcus Garvey, people like Du Bois, people like George Padmore, and Leon Sullivan have made this connection for us. When Dr. Sullivan started the summit in 1991, Houphouët-Boigny, the president of Ivory Coast, gave him dual citizenship. And there's a famous picture of him holding a passport in the air. And that was only the first of a number of dual citizenship he received from people, leaders in other countries who saw what he was doing and revered what he was doing. Now, we try to keep alive